Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I'm here today to do a book review and actually back this book up by using this book. And you might be wondering, okay, so this book is called Message to the Millennials by Brother Rizza Islam. And it is absolutely an amazing, amazing, amazing book. Just facts. I mean, to be honest, it's a history book. Like, it's a history book. It's a textbook. Like, really. And so I don't know, I was reading As a Man Thinketh, and I've read both books. This is my third time reading through Rizza Islam's book. Like, look at it. Like, it is absolutely all tore up. So today what I wanted to focus on is the chapter that specifically talks about mental health and mental illnesses, because today is Mental Health Day, and it's totally important that we understand what mental health is, why it's important, and that's what we do on Snatching Your Mindset, right? So if you get a chance, grab this book, Message to the Millennials by Brother Rizza Islam. I'll make sure to drop it down in the description for you guys, to the link to his site and where you can get the book and everything. And As a Man Thinketh, you can get off Amazon or anywhere else, but I'll also put the link down there just in case. So just in case you haven't read either book, I'm going to go ahead and break this book down. So this book, it says, in August of 2017, the United States government, the FBI, classified Black people who are passionate about who they are, their culture, their history, their identity as being BIEs, or Black identity extremists. Being a community activist, educator, humanitarian for nearly 15 years, Rizza Islam argues that it is not the Black identity extremists that this government is afraid of. It is the Black intellectual extremists. This book exposes the plot, agenda, targeting of the Black intellect, and an apparent resurrection of COINTELPRO in modern day times. This book is absolutely phenomenal. I cannot get over this book. Like, I need to just meet Brother Rizza Islam. Hey, Brother Rizza Islam, shoot your shot if you see this video. Like, I really want to talk to you because this is just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm going to relate this book and back up every single thing that Rizza says, okay? Rizza went to the grocery store on this, okay? So what I'm going to do with his book is I'm going to take all the food that he gave us and got from the grocery store, where he got from the source, because, you know, he's a researcher and all, and I'm going to cook it. You know what I'm saying? Welcome to my kitchen. This is Hadida Toto Snatching Your Mindset. We about to cook some food up in here. Are you ready? Okay, so as a man think I'm going to cook it. This is going to be my pot today, and we're going to stir up some soup. So you're probably thinking, like, how? Okay, so let's go through this. So I'm going to read a few things. I'm explaining, I'm going to read it, I'm explaining it, etc., etc., okay? So mental health is the same as every other form of health, and it should be managed. It should be taken care of. It should be balanced. So balance, management, taking care of. How are you taking care of your mental health? I know, especially for people who look like us with melanin and stuff, it's oftentimes, you know, we don't necessarily even think about our mental health. And it's important. Our mental health is super important because it is the functionalities and who you are. Okay. It's who you are. It's your spirituality. It's your mental state, how you're thinking. Are you thinking, or are you just programmed? Right? Are you programmed to think? Who are thinking your thoughts? And how are you even controlling your thoughts? Do you have the power to do that? So that's super important. And he also emphasizes the fact that it's difficult to be sane, right? So you're on your phone and you're reading what's going on in the news, and all you see is negative, 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 problem this, problem that. I totally agree with him, because, I mean, even the campaigning, we keep getting told who we are all the time, who we are all the time, who we are all the time. And we're never given the chance to create our own narrative of who we want to be. So I'm on page 130. So if you have the book, go ahead and follow along. If you don't have the book, this is what page 130 looks like. Okay. So as you see, like, I marked this book all up because, like I said, it's my third time reading it. So this is the part where I really coincided, and I really, really, really felt what he was saying. It was like he was talking to me. So it talks about a spiritual system and having a spiritual system in place. And basically, you need to have mental balance and to have spiritual balance. Okay, so if you have a strong spiritual balance, then the mental balance will naturally come. And I totally agree with that. in my own life, because as you all know, I'm a Reiki healer. I've been through hypnotherapy and, getting my mental health straight. That's the whole reason why I started Snatching Your Mindset in the first place, is because it's super duper duper important that you take care of your mental space, especially for the melanated person, because we face so many different, I would say, opportunities for adversity, right? People try us, people test us all the time, and as sweet and as kind and as loving as I am, I get it too, right? But I ignore those people. I've really gained a great skill of ignoring those people. They call me, in the South, they call me a Yankee or something like that, which doesn't even bother me because I don't care. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't care to know what it is. And it doesn't sound like a very friendly word to call someone in 2020. And it sounds a bit old and tired. So I don't know what your intention is behind calling me that, but sure, call me what you wanted to call me. That's a reflection of you, not myself. So I keep it moving. You know what I mean? And you have to have a strong mental mindset of when people are yelling at you, people are screaming at you, people are, they're exposing themselves and how their heart is, because I'm not going to scream at you. I'm not going to yell at you. I don't care. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you can scream and yell. You yelling and screaming at yourself. I'm just watching you. Because if I had a video camera, you would watch yourself and you would think that you look ridiculous, right? So just don't worry about the bygones, basically. And on this one part, he says racism is inseparable from the roots of psychiatry. The entire history of psychiatry, beginning with scientific conclusions that were made in the 1830s, was an effort to prove the intellectual inferiority of Black people. I totally agree with what he said, because you can't separate the two, because that's how the program was made in the first place, right? The program, racism is a system. It's a program. It's a program to weaken the mind, okay? And going back just to this book, let's talk about what they talk about. The mind is the master. Okay, mind is the master. So it says by James Allen, as a man thinketh, we are made or unmade by ourselves. By our thoughts, we forge the weapons by which we can destroy ourselves. Likewise, we also fashion the tools with which we build for ourselves heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. By the right choice and true application of thought, we ascend to the divine perfection. By the abuse and wrong application of thought, we descend below the level of the beast. Between these two extremes, we are all grades of character. We are our own maker and master. So what he's saying is as you think and what you are, and he talks a lot about intention. He talks a lot about seeking success. Are you seeking success to help others, or are you seeking success for yourself? Are you seeking to reverse something, or are you seeking to make peace, right? It's kind of like when Mother Teresa said, I'm not going to go to an anti-war rally or a pro-war rally. I will go to a peace rally, right? I'm not going to be for or against it, but I'm going to be for my own cause, right? Why be for or against something when you can have a whole different realm, right? I don't have to be anti-war or pro-war to promote peace, right? So the central idea here is promoting peace within and for yourself. Let's keep on going. So then he goes into like different key people such as Benjamin Rush and and Samuel Cartwright. And these are just people who were just like, you have to get the book to find these people, because it's just absolutely phenomenal how much research this man has done, right? He talks about, I want to talk about two things. The first thing I want to talk about is the American Journal of Psychiatry. So according to page 132 in here, it says, the American Journal of Psychiatry officially proclaimed that Negroes, Black people, as descendants from savages and cannibals, were ill prepared for higher civilization. There is a very long and intimate relationship between the eugenics movement and the Ku Klux Klan. So he goes on further to say the last part that I said. So let's address the first part as Black people as descendants from savages and cannibals were ill prepared for higher civilization. Now, the fact that they could use vocabulary words such as savages and such as cannibals. It proves to show what they believe about themselves, right? Because they are cannibals and savages, yet they're working for you, right? So what do you think you are? That's my first question. The second part is where he talks about the eugenics and the Ku Klux Klan. So this is super important. It actually made me redefine, got a little note card here, redefine what racism is, right? So I define racism as a system of inferiority claiming the false fantasy of superiority. It is a mindset and way of thinking. It's not black and white. It is in the reality, but in the fantasy of what racism is brought about in the reality by using people of identifiers, make it easier to identify certain people. We use people of color, brown, and black people to justify, right? So let me read my definition. This is my definition. There ain't no definition of racism I've ever heard, but this is my definition. Racism is a system of inferiority claiming the false fantasy of superiority. It is a mindset and way of thinking. Racism is a mindset and a way of thinking. If you don't like somebody because it is a system of inferiority. It's a system of inferiority. I'm going to say that again. It's a system of inferiority, claiming the false fantasy of superiority. So in your mind, you think that you're superior. In your fantasy, you are superior. But in reality, you're not. And you never will be because you're human. So at the end of the day, you are part of humankind, right? I serve the God of humankind. I serve the master of humankind. I serve Allah, right? So for me, or in your language, in English, I'm sorry, in our language, English, we call same God, right? Allah is just the Arabic word for God. So let's continue. On page 133 in Rizza Islam's book, it says, the World Health Organization declared in 1983 that psychiatry had cultivated racism and that a part of it did have a parallel in ownership. I'm sorry. Let me read that again. The World Health Organization declared in 1983 that psychiatry had cultivated racism and that a part of it did have a parallel in the ownership and trading of slaves. So, this is my question. If WHO declared that in 1983, why haven't people who look like me gotten their reparations yet? So, but we can just leave that alone for a second. That's just a personal question I have. But he continues on to say that the World Health Organization Commission stated, psychiatry certainly does have a parallel in the ownership and trading of slaves. Now, I need you guys to follow me here on this. Harriet Tubman once said, if only they knew they were slaves. This goes to show that psychologically even, it was not just physical. Slavery wasn't just a physical type of condition. It was also mental. It was mental slavery as well, which is when my brother Kanye West decided to say that slavery was a choice. I believe that's along the lines of what he was talking about, is that it was a mental enslavement. It wasn't necessarily, by his definition of what a choice is from the universal law, everything is a choice. However, Everything is a choice in terms of if you choose to choose or if you choose not to choose. That is also a choice. If you choose to be programmed or you choose not to be programmed, that is also a choice. However, but if you are programmed as a child to be a certain way, and you have not been taught how to use your mind, there's going to be very few who are able to do that, right? So that's just something to really think about in terms of that. And just the fact that slavery was mental and therefore became physical labor. So one of the things about James Allen's book is that he gives us the solution, right? I think it's important to know our history. We have Rizza with the facts per usual, because that's what Rizza does. Rizza gives us the facts all day, every day, and just absolutely amazing. He gives us all these names of people. You know, I'm not even going to show you guys or discuss anymore. You just need to get the book yourself, because this is a gem. This is a true gem. I tell you, like, I'm serious. This is a true gem. What he's done is he has given information. This is a history book. It's the history book of 2020. Whenever, you know what I mean, babies are had one day, whenever I get married or whatever, whenever Prince Charming comes along, it's like we have to allow ourselves to be open to learn information. And a lot of the times it's not necessarily about us learning. It's that maybe we don't know how to learn. And it's okay to ask for help. And that's the thing. And that's why I'm here is, you know, rule number 1 of this classroom is to take notes. And rule number 2 is to pay attention and pause the video if you need to stop to take notes. And rule number 3 is to ask questions and get the source. Like, I have the sources right here. Get these 2 books and look at them yourself. Take time to read. And if you don't want to read, continue listening to me. Because I'm going to go straight to the book and I'm going to tell you what's up. Because at the end of the day, we have to start thinking for ourselves. As a Man Thinketh, Think and Grow Rich. If you read all of these books, they're talking about how to use your mind. Okay? Only 2% of the population really knows how to think and use their mind. And it's super important, right? We all went from basically it being black and white, slavery and things like that, to now it's kind of like if you have a job, you know what I mean? Your CEO is your master. Your CEO is your master. You think that, you know how many millions of dollars your company is making while they want to give you a slither of the cheese? And you're the one doing the work that's making them money? I tell you, when I used to work for a private international school, I calculated that students were paying 65,000 kwai per semester, maybe a little bit more per semester. I had 28 students in my class. I multiplied 68,000 by 28, and that was per semester. I calculated that price, and then I calculated it for the entire year, and then I calculated for the entire school if that was indeed the price. And then I looked at my salary of what I was making, and I said, after this job, I am not ever working for anyone else again unless I'm working for myself. Because you know what? Ain't nobody finna master over me no more. I'm tired of being this great teacher. Oh, you're a great teacher. You're such an amazing teacher. You're so much fun. Yeah, I love it. But at the same time, if I'm so great, why are you not paying me like I'm great? You know what I mean? And that's something to ask yourself. And that doesn't mean that everybody should quit their jobs tomorrow, but it's just something to think about, right? Who are you working for? What is the intention? What is the vision? What is the mission of the company that you find yourself so acquainted with? Let's continue and keep going. One of the things that I really, really loved that Rizza pointed out in his book on page 134 is he said primarily it was used, so it is the intellectual inferiority of African Americans that they claimed to for us to be. So primarily it, which is the mental illness, the mental stability, the mental health, right, of Black people. So when he says it, that's what he's referring to. Primarily, it was used to justify the murdering, killing, and of course, sterilizing of us, and even aborting of us all had a basis in our mental illness, mental health, or mental framework. And then he talks about how white men are basically considered mentally ill when they do a crime, and black people are considered thugs when they do a crime. It is so funny that he says that, because I used to be a journalist, and I went to the Society of Professional Journalists meeting, and it's called SBJ. And in the meeting, we talked about mental illness in the news. And they were like, we really need to make names, call it what it is and educate the population about it. Because I remember raising my hand and I'm like, excuse me, let's cut this out right now, and everybody used to call me the female Malcolm X. And I used to be like, because I was taking African American studies. Let me tell you something. You take African American studies minor and a journalism major, ain't nobody ready for you. They don't be ready for you because they're like, stop, just shh. And I'm like, don't tell me to be quiet. Like, don't tell me to use my voice, and then when I'm using my mind, I'm being told to be quiet. That's not how that works. Anyways, we're in the meeting, and they're talking about this mental illness and trying to have sympathy and all these things. And I was like, hold up. Excuse me. Hi. Yes, ma'am, you have a question? Yes, I do have a question. How is it that when white men have a crime, it's a mental illness? When Middle Eastern, brown people or men do a crime, they're a terrorist. And when black people commit a crime, they're thugs. But now you want me to have empathy and sympathy for the white man for being called crazy? But you can call someone a terrorist and a thug? Where does that make sense? I promise you, it was like, that's all you heard. It was like a pin could have dropped in that room, and everybody was silent, and everybody was like, and I was like, and even look at your panel right now. You're a bunch of white women and white men. Where's the diversity even in your panel? Why do I have to go to the National Society of Black Journalists in order to see diversity on there? It just went to show how segregated the media was in itself, right? And that was something that I did not appreciate. But they don't have an explanation for that. But it's so systemized. You know what I mean? It's so systemized that even they don't realize that they're doing it. They have no clue. They have no understanding. They have no idea of what they're doing. And it just goes to show, because they're so systemized, like I said, racism is a system of inferiority claiming the false fantasy of superiority. It is a mindset and a way of thinking, right? So as long as I can say racism doesn't exist, I don't see color, right? That gives you the chance to have deniability, which means if you have deniability, you don't take accountability nor responsibility for your actions. Therefore, you feel no shame and no guilt because you're claiming that your system does not exist when indeed it does. Because you have brought your system from the fantasy into the reality. So don't play with fantasy and reality. You brought it here into the reality, and now you're trying to create a sense of deniability, and you're trying to gaslight the entire nation and show that we don't see what we see. But baby, like I said before, I'm here to, since there's no gaslighting happening, I'm gonna pour the water over the fire real quick, right? Since the fire doesn't exist, it doesn't matter, right? I'm just gonna put the water over it because you got to stop gaslighting. Like, this is ridiculous. And I'm only so aware of this because, like I said before, I lived in China for 5 years. And the reason that I stayed home is because I see how crazy it is right now. And I'm like, y'all need to see another way because this ain't it. This is not it. I've been around the world and I've been to many places, and this is not it. This is not how life is supposed to be. This is not. You should not be getting called names and being told all of these things. Like, snatch your mindset. Brene Brown, I'm just going to talk about her for a little bit. She was on Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith, and she talked about vulnerability, right? And she talked about shame and guilt, right? And she talked about the difference between them. Basically, shame is I am bad, right? And then she said guilt is more like I feel bad for, right? Or I did something bad, right? So that's how she defined it. And she said that neither one of them are good. In this case, where there's deniability, however, because I'm going to apply this to in the context of what we're talking about, in this sense, there needs to be shame and deniability, and guilt, because it is acknowledgement that is happening. Now, if it is acknowledgement that is happened, then run me my checks, run me my money, and give me my reparations. I have no emotions about this. This conversation does not make me angry, and it can't make me angry. I don't care in terms of how you feel, what your guilt is, what your shame is. I just want my money. Run me my trillions of dollars of money. Matter of fact, I want 70 trillion. So run me my money, and then we're fine. You know what I'm saying? We're going to talk about it all day. And we'll see who mad at who. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to put ill will towards you because of what your ancestors did. But give me my ancestors' money. It's not, you can get nobody no 40 acres and a mule. You can get nobody no money. And then on top of that, you try to make a bill of $500 billion? You sign stimulus checks for $1.8 trillion to go to the citizens. You got the money. Even if it takes you, if I'm asking for 70 trillion, even if it takes you $2 trillion every year to give out to us until, you done gave us all the money. But really, it's like a lifetime of that because there's still deniability going on. You haven't admitted. Anyways, at the end, Rizza goes to say, this is why our mind has to be right. Study more, educate ourselves more, learn more. We have to contribute to build and construct mental muscles in order for us to survive. We have to be sound of mind, less drinking, less smoking, if not, no drinking and no smoking, and require this in order for our mental faculties to be as sharp as possible. Whether we are doing it for our children, our family, our community, our nation, our people, or simply ourselves. We must think about the bigger picture. And if our mind is not under control, then who is controlling it? Then, quote, think. It ain't illegal yet. End quote, Eddie Griffith. So what he's talking about here, hold on a second, my computer's running out of battery. Okay, what he's talking about here in this section of the book is he's talking about how have control over your mind. And a lot of the times people say, don't drink, don't smoke, blah, blah, blah. It's not about habits. It's not about having fun. It's making sure that you are always conscientious of your mind. When you're not controlling your mind, who and what is controlling it? For example, I remember back in the day, before I became Muslim, I used to drink, and it was to the point where I would get blacked out drunk. Okay. And I wouldn't remember. I would wake up and I didn't remember anything. So the question then becomes, well, then who put me in here? How did I get here? And if I wasn't here, then who was here? Right? So what was controlling you? Was it your unconscious? Was it your subconscious mind? What was controlling you? And if so, do you feel comfortable being controlled in that way, right? And same thing with that's about more so having a sound mind, right? There's a balance to everything, and it's about having a sound mind at the end of the day. I'm not saying whether you should do it or not. That's your business. I'm not saying if you should do it or not, but I am saying in terms of mental health and mental wellness that when you do put those kind of things into your body and have yourself in a state where you're not necessarily sober of the mind, then you do end up doing stuff that maybe you can't even explain why you did it, right? And that's super important. So I'm going to go ahead and back up what Rizza was saying with As a Man Thinketh, because this is like the ultimate mindset thought book besides Think and Go Rich and all these other books that I love. I can't wait. We're just going over one chapter. Like, both of these are one chapter, and I'm already on 30 minutes talking about Rizza's book. Okay, like, this book is so intense. My other favorite chapter is called Argue Over a Religion After We Are Free, period. And I wrote, yes, brother Rizza, that part. Because it's so important. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about none of those big controversial issues until we get our minds right. It doesn't make sense for us to be arguing about stuff when we don't even know what we're talking about. Now, let's use As the Man Thinketh by James Allen to back up some of the points. So it says, even poverty and lack of time, so this is on page 77, even poverty and lack of time and leisure are not the evils that you imagine they are. And if they hinder you in your progress, it is because you have clothed them in your own weakness. And the evil that you see in them is really yourself. So what it's basically saying is, when you feel a certain kind of way, right? When you feel irritated, mad, when somebody comes your way, it's really a time for reflection of yourself. Whether they're doing wrong or they're doing right, it's a reflection in time for yourself. So it's looking inward. It is a test over and over and over and over and over again. And it's about you hopping out. The harder the test, for some, not all, but for some people, it's a difficult test. But when you can overcome and still love your neighbor despite what they're doing, you are therefore in a different realm of consciousness. Okay? So, I'm not even going to say what I was thinking, because y'all ain't ready for that yet, and we're not even going to do that. But going back to the point about drugs and alcohol and mastering your weaknesses, it says, do not complain that you are a slave, but lift yourself up by noble conduct above the plane of slavery. Before complaining that you are a slave to another, be sure that you are not a slave to yourself. This is so important, not to be a slave to yourself. And I'm going to keep reading, and then I'm going to go back and explain this part. Look within, look searchingly, and have no mercy upon yourself. You will find there, perchance, slavish thoughts, slavish desires, and in your daily life conduct slavish habits. Conquer these, cease to be a slave to self, and no one will have the power to enslave you. As you overcome self, you will overcome all adverse conditions, and every difficulty will fall before you. This is important because it's basically talking about intentions here. Okay, so when you lift yourself up and you have noble conduct and you're above the plane of slavery, right? And when I say slavery, when I read slavery in this sense, I'm not taking it as, the cotton picking in the field. I mean, we're talking about mental faculties, like our brother Rizza was talking about. We're talking about our mental faculties that we constantly have to keep in check and keep in a line. Okay, we have to constantly repeat to ourselves, do these different repetitions. We have to discipline our own minds. It's super duper important that we train our minds, because when we train our minds, we align with our spirit. Let me say that again. When we train our minds, we align with our spirits. And when we align with our spirits, we place and put ourselves in a certain kind of consciousness. Consciousness is super important, right? I would even argue to go ahead and say, I'm not a religious scholar. I am an independent thinker and an independent analysts and whatever you want to call it. I just think for myself. If we really look into Christ-likeness, right? A lot of people in the church or whoever will talk about it. And if we really think about it, it's more of a consciousness, right? Be Christ-like. It's Christ consciousness that we're seeking. It's that unshakable, unwavering faith that we're seeking, right? It's that stableness. It's that stability of self, that self-regulation of you can tempt me, you can make me angry, and I'm not going to be weak, right? So if you really look at who's weak and who's strong, it's going to be your people who are most oppressed are really your rich people. The people who are rich and seeking self for themselves, those are your poor people. Because like James Allen said, you have to be rich of virtue, right? It's not about possessions. The possessions will come. When you are rich of virtue, you get so much further. I want to go ahead and go to page 80 of this book, and where it talks about King David's testimony. So it says, "For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Their eyes stand out in fatness, with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. Verily, I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocence. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood their end." So what does this mean? What does this mean? If we go over to page 81, it goes more into it. So it's talking about that God state of consciousness, that sanctuary, the Most High, right? And that's why people are like, oh, be Christ-like, right? Is because that's what they named the consciousness. Is they named it Christ, right? So imagine it's like a video game or a simulation, right? And they decided to name the highest consciousness, which some people call God's state of consciousness, sanctuary of the Most High, right? So you have some people calling it, right, Christ consciousness. So which is essentially just the consciousness of peace, of not being bothered in serving others, right? You're serving yourself, but you're serving others at the same time. And you're getting rid of your maliciousness, right? Because malicious ways, and just in case for people who don't understand or know what malicious means means to do something with negative or bad intent, right? And intent or intention is the energy that you put behind something, right? So if I have negative intent to do something, that means that I don't wish someone well, right? I'm taking an action while I'm not wishing them well. If I have good intentions or good intent, that means that I am wishing someone well. I'm blessing them as I'm doing this action. Okay, just for those people who might not know what it means. And like I say all the time, we're not judging people for not knowing certain things. Let's keep going. On page 81, we see it says, "You will then no longer relax your faith when you see immoral people accumulating outward riches, for you will know that they must come again to poverty and degradation." Rich people who are barren of virtue are in reality poor, and as surely as the waters of the river are drifting to the ocean, so surely is he in the midst of all his riches, drifting towards poverty and misfortune. And though they die rich, yet they must return to reap the bitter fruit of all of their immorality, which is what we're seeing today, right? We've had a bunch of people who have called a certain population who looks like me savages and cannibals and experimented on them and had whole systems of racism, which is a system of inferiority with the false what is it? I don't even know my own definition. With the false fantasy of superiority, and it's a mindset, right? So I don't even like to put black and white in it. It's just a mindset, period. Because you can have the any race who has a system of inferiority, right? Claiming the false fantasy of superiority. Anybody who's has a system of superiority, there's an issue there, right? Because anytime that you say that you're better, then that means someone else is worse, and it's unnecessary, right? That's like me walking around saying, "Oh, I'm so innocent because I'm celibate and I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't do these things. So I'm only going to hang out with people who are like me." No, that's stupid. I have friends who, and this is like, I have friends who have done things that I wouldn't necessarily do, and it's okay. But guess what? We can be in the company of one another. You know, I remember going to Cali one time, and I had friends just rolling up. You know what I mean? And they were just rolling up and smoking their weed, and they were doing their thing. But they knew not to ask me because they knew I didn't do that. So it's about, you still have to be among your brothers and sisters. They're still your brothers and sisters. So I'm not casting no stone. I'm not condemning anyone to nothing because I'm not God, and I'm not finna pretend to be God. Unless you're in my classroom and you acting crazy, then I'll be like, shame on you. Get out of my classroom. We waiting. Little leprechaun. Little leprechaun, just to let you know, if you ever hear me say little leprechaun, I'll be like, little leprechaun, go ahead and sit down somewhere or get out. Little leprechaun is what I call the little, you know, you always had that little hater. You know what I mean? That little hater. So I call that the little leprechaun. Because little leprechauns, they be hating. Just hating for no reason. Just hating because they want to. Like, just because you can't stand how you look in the mirror, you be hating. You know what I mean? So I call that little leprechaun. Little leprechaun is that little, listen. No. Okay? Because sometimes the leprechaun be coming to you talking a whole bunch of mess that you don't need to listen to. They be telling you that you can't do nothing, that you are nothing, and that you ain't never gonna be nothing. And I don't deal with people like that, and I don't deal with folks like that. So what make you think I'm gonna deal with a leprechaun that act like that? Let's keep going. So basically what it's talking about is when you don't have morals and you're immoral, you know, and you have bad motives, eventually that comes back to you, that comes back on your generation, that comes back on your society. So what we're seeing right now is that the system that was created with high deniability of the people who use the system, what we're seeing now is a backlash, is that it's the coming back of backlash. And I mean, I don't care. I don't really want to have conversations. Like I said, just run me my paychecks, run me my money, and give me my money. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal of, I'm not about to yell at you, I'm not about to scream at you. The world is watching right now. Everybody knows what's going on. You can go anywhere around the world and meet different melanated people, and the people with these systems of inferiority, claiming the false fantasy of superiority. These people are all over. I met a few at even the international school I used to work at. Like, you wouldn't believe it. I heard two women. I'm going past the cafeteria, and it was Becky and Karen. And Becky and Karen are talking about, oh my gosh, in China, my white privilege doesn't work anymore. I just don't know what to do. And I was like, hi, my name is Black person. And I'm just letting you know that I'm here. Like, what makes you think, oh my gosh, now, Toto, now I see how you feel. You know, it doesn't feel good to be treated like this. Like, my white privilege just doesn't work anymore. Are y'all serious right now? Like, for real? Welcome to the back of the bus, Becky and Karen. Sit back here. I don't know why y'all think that y'all would be superior and this isn't your country. So it just goes to show that this false narrative of superiority, it goes all around the world. And, you know, I remember dealing with a Karen at my job. She was super racist. I didn't even know what it was. I just was like, what is wrong with her? Why is she so mean? Why is she so rude to me? Because I didn't grow up in a space where, white people behaved in that manner. I grew up near Washington, D.C., and where the political climate, it's quite, it was different for me because I grew up in a very diverse population where I was highly respected and I did a lot of things around the community here. So for me, I was just like, what's wrong with y'all? I ain't never met these kind of people. It's only when I'm in the South or when I'm abroad and you have these sedity people thinking that they're better than you because of where they come from. Like, come on, you guys. I don't understand. Anyways, let's keep going. So it says lust, hatred, anger, vanity, pride, and self-indulgence, self-seeking, obstinacy. All of these are poverty and weakness, whereas love, purity, gentleness, meekness, patience, compassion, generosity, self-forgetfulness, and self-renunciation are all wealth and power. So the true wealth is about how you feel within, right? That's where your true power lies. And when you're lusting or you're being a hater or you're seeking things for yourself or you're being self-indulgent, you know what I mean? That signifies poverty and weakness. So you're judged by your heart, and therefore what's in your heart is what's reflective outwards. So yeah, you can have a lot of rich men who have a lot of money, or even rich women who have a lot of money and they have terrible character. But it just goes to show that they're poor in the heart. So while they might reflect, and it just goes to show even our system itself, why are the people who have terrible intentions, why are these the rich people? And the people who are actually good are your poor people. That goes to show your system of racism that is inferiority, right? Because they're inferior of the heart, right? Inferiority, claiming the false fantasy of superiority. So them having riches, outside riches and money and all these things, it makes them feel as though they have it. I'm just out here teaching, you know what I'm saying? I'm just cooking up food, so don't be mad at the cook. If the kitchen's too hot, step out. But basically, it just goes on to show that it's all about your mindset. It's all about your mind and where you are. I'm going to go ahead and read the last part, which is the solution to coming out of your poverty. Actually, this chapter is called The Way Out of Undesirable Conditions. Okay, the way out of undesirable conditions. I love this. I mean, between this book and this book, like I could literally write a thesis on it. Like I absolutely, Brother Rizza, I just don't. This man is just sharp, super sharp, and having the opportunity to, read everything actually on paper all at the same time. This is research that actually I didn't know specific details the way that he put it, but I did know about a lot of this stuff as I was reading it, but it was nice to have the details, and it was nice to have someone who had already done the research for you. And actually, I did a few fact checks on him, you know what I mean? Because I'm not the type of person to be like, oh, wow, you're so amazing. I love you so much. Wow. Like, I'm the type of person, I'm about to fact check what you wrote. Let me look at the different, sources and so I can validate you. Because at the end of the day, we're on the same team, right? My brother's my brother, my sister's my sister. And I want to make sure that, are you able to stand by what you say? And I know that he's an upstanding man. I mean, the way he presents himself. But at the same time, it's always good to fact check. It's always good to make sure that what you're seeing is true, right? People claim to be different things every day, but you always have to make sure and use, right? Because he's a free thinker. He uses his own mind, right? He uses his own mind. He's empowered by using his own mind. So even with people who use their own mind, ask questions. Those people who use their own minds love questions because they're just teachers who are not in the classroom. They love, and people who don't like questions, like I said before, question them anyway, because I've never met a teacher who doesn't like to be asked questions. Not a good teacher and not a real teacher. Teachers who don't want to be asked questions, those are not teachers. They're just there. And you can do that by yourself. So let's keep going. The last part on page 87. It says, come then out of your poverty, come out of your pain, come out of your troubles and sighs and complaints and heartaches and loneliness by coming out of yourself. Let the old tattered garment of your petty self-centeredness fall from you and put on the new garment of universal love. You will then realize the inward heaven, and it will be reflected in all your outward life. Those who set their feet firmly upon the path of self-conquest, who walk aided by the staff of faith, the highway of sacrifice, will assuredly achieve the highest prosperity and will reap abounding the enduring joy and bliss. So what it's saying is to conquest yourself, to conquest your mind. Be the master of your own mind. Be the master of your own mind. I don't know if you guys watched a few interviews that I've done and I've been doing lately, but one of the interviews I was recently in with my girl Fernanda of Positive Blueprints, I was telling her I'm the boss of myself. You know, I'm the type who always got insubordination letters and how to sign them from the boss, because like I said, you're not my boss. I'm just here. Like, I'm bearing witness to your foolery. You know what I mean? Run me my check so I can do this work and I can leave. Because at the end of the day, you're just there to work for somebody else's dream, right? So if you're going to work for someone else's dream, make sure that as a team, you're on one accordance. You have goals, and actually that the company actually cares about you. And I think that's super important. You want to work for people who actually care about you and who actually have your best interest of growth at heart. And even if you forget, to even ask, why am I doing this? And you're enjoying yourself and you're growing, that's the way to go, And if they see complaints as a way that they can do better, and they actually do it, right? You want to have people with pure heart who have your back, who have these attributes that you're looking for. So that is it for Snatching Your Mindset. This was a long video, and I'm not sorry at all, because it's amazing. Just As a Man Thinketh is an amazing book by James Allen. And this book by Message to the Millennials by Brother Rizza Islam. Absolutely phenomenal book. Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I cannot give this man enough claps. Can't give him enough claps, because I will continuously back this man up all day, every day. Because at the end of the day, he knows what he's talking about. And there's a lot of sacred information in here. So make sure you check this out, read it, wake up. And yes, he intentionally spelled millennials incorrectly. Good job on the spell check. He intentionally did that. I'm not going to tell you why he did it, because you need to go get the book to find out. So anyways, this is Khadija Toto. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.